Hi, everybody. I've woken to the sad news that legendary hard rock and heavy metal drummer Lee Kerslake has passed away at the age of 73 after a long battle with cancer. Lee Kerslake was a great heavy rock drummer. He played with a lot of power, he had a great feel, and he is probably most known for playing with Uriah Heep and on Ozzy Osbourne's first two solo albums. Lee got his start in the late 60s, early 70s, playing with The Gods, Head Machine, and Toe Fat, amongst others. He then joined Uriah Heep on their Demons and Wizards album and would eventually play on 17 Uriah Heep studio albums as well as numerous live albums. He also joined up with Ozzy Osbourne after Ozzy had left Black Sabbath and was putting his solo band together, the Blizzard of Oz. Lee Kerslake would join and play on Ozzy's first two solo albums, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. He would also play on solo albums from Uriah Heep singer David Byron and Uriah Heep keyboard player Ken Hensley. He would also team up with Bob Daisley and do the band Living Loud, as well as some various other bands that Lee had played in. So I thought I would just take a moment to highlight just a few of the great albums that Lee Kerslake has played on. Like I mentioned, he was a drummer with a great feel, I would say, in that 70s hard rock tradition of John Bonham. So, like I mentioned, he joined Uriah Heep for their Demons and Wizards album. Uh, and his first two albums with Uriah Heep would be Demons and Wizards and The Magician's Birthday. I featured these albums in a Milestone Moments. I think these are fantastic albums. Lee's drumming on these records are just great, like on Demons and Wizards, Traveler in Time, Easy Living. He was a drummer that just had this great sort of hard driving feel. Rainbow Demon, it's all these big, cool, heavy drum fills in it. In some ways, he's sort of a combination of John Bonham and maybe like Carmine Appice or Vinny Appice. The way he did these really just big, heavy fills. The Magician's Birthday, another great album, very much like Demons and Wizards. Sunrise, absolutely fantastic. Lee's heavy drumming. It should also be noted that Lee was also a great vocalist, and when he joined Uriah Heep is famous for a bunch of things, one of them being their use of background vocals. And when Lee joined Uriah Heep, he really took that to another level. And if you see any live videos of Uriah Heep when Lee was in the band, you can see him back there singing a lot of background vocals. And a song like Sunrise really, for me, highlights how great Uriah Heep background vocals were. Sweet Lorraine, a great rocker. The Magician's Birthday is one that features a lot of great playing from Lee. It's sort of this long song that goes off into sort of a progressive jamming section where the guitar is jamming out and Lee is underneath him just going crazy, playing this driving beat, all these drum fills. It's just fantastic. So Lee would play on a bunch of Uriah Heep albums and eventually leave Uriah Heep for a few years in the late 70s. And he would go on to join Ozzy Osbourne's band. And at the time, Ozzy was fired from Black Sabbath. Ozzy was down and out. He was trying to put a band together. He meets up with Randy Rhoads, and Bob Daisley comes into the picture. And they just, as the story goes, they just couldn't find the right drummer with the right feel that they were looking for. They searched all over, all these different people coming in, and one of the last drummers to come in to audition was Lee Kerslake. And as Bob tells the story, as soon as Lee started playing, he just looked at Randy. Randy looked at him, and they just said, yeah, this is the guy. Because again, Lee just had a great, great feel. So he came in kind of late in the writing sessions for Blizzard of Oz, but his drumming on this record is just great. And Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman are two of my all-time favorite heavy metal albums of all time. He does get a writing credit on No Bone Movies, but his drumming on this is just fantastic. The absolutely iconic intro to Crazy Train with his bomb 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 bomb, and then he goes into like sort of a disco-esh feel in the verse for that song. Suicide Solution, Revelation, Mother Earth, Steal Away the Night, I Don't Know, all the songs, man. The drums sound great on this record. The feel on this is great. All the drum fills are just perfect. So one of my favorite heavy metal albums of all time. And Lee would be there from very early on with Ozzy and the Blizzard of Oz. So Lee would tour in Europe with the band, and they would pretty quickly then turn around and record the album Diary of a Madman. Now this has maybe Lee Kerslake's most signature drum fill, if you will, drum intro. The intro, the first song on the album, the drum intro to Over the Mountain, absolutely iconic, famous drum intro, that sort of triplet. Absolutely great. One of the greatest heavy metal drum intros of all time. Sadly, Lee and Bob Daisley would get embroiled in a decades-long legal battle with Ozzy over unpaid royalties. And even more sadly, I don't have the sleeve in here right now, on the inner sleeve of Diary of a Madman, it lists Rudy Sarzo and Tommy Aldridge, Rudy Sarzo as the bass player and Tommy Aldridge as the drummer, which was not the case. This is Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake on this album. And as a young kid, I remember getting this record, and this is before the internet, and thinking that it was Tommy Aldridge. That Tommy Aldridge played that legendary drum intro at the beginning of Over the Mountain that he played on this whole record, and that is not the case. And Lee is credited. Bob and Lee were way more involved in the writing of all the songs on this record. If you read Bob Daisley's book, For Fact's Sake, he sort of gives you the inside info on the making of these two albums, and he talks about how important Lee was to the writing of this record. For instance, the song Flying High Again, Bob says that was basically written between Randy, Bob, and Lee. And again, I mentioned earlier that Lee was a vocalist, so they said Lee would sit down, sing out the melody lines while they worked on this stuff. Bob would fill in the lyrics. The same thing with the song Diary of a Madman. Bob tells a story about how they wrote that song, just Randy, Bob, and Lee. Lee sang the vocals, they demoed it out, and they gave it to Ozzy for him to learn. So Lee had, even though he came in a little late on the Blizzard of Oz writing sessions for Diary of a Madman, he was very involved in the writing of this record and very important to the sound of that record. Unfortunately, he would get let go by Ozzy and Sharon before the band came to America. And then, like I said, he was in and out of legal battles with the Osbournes over unpaid royalties and trying to get their name rightfully credited on these records. And in one of the most shameful moves in heavy metal history, the Osbourne camp, Sharon, whoever you want to say, removed Lee and Bob's drumming from certain remastered versions of the Blizzard and Diary the Blizzard and Diary albums removed their drumming and bass playing, which is just absolutely criminal to do that to those legendary albums. Eventually, they were put back on, and I think the latest versions, whatever the latest versions of those records has Lee and Bob on it. But unfortunately, Bob and Lee never got the credit that they deserved for taking part in these two classic albums. Lee, and like I said, there's just great drumming all over Diary of a Madman, Over the Mountain, Flying High Again, Little Dolls starts off with another cool sort of drum thing. Lee's drums always sounded great. He always had a really just, powerful drum sound, always right there in the mix. He would then be let go from Ozzy's solo band, and him and Bob would go back and play with Uriah Heep, starting with the Abominog album. You can see Lee's picture underneath there. They would be involved in the writing and the playing. And this is a great Uriah Heep album. It doesn't sound like the 70s Uriah Heep. It's more of like a modern version of the band with Pete Golby on vocals, John Sinclair on keyboards. It's sort of like taking the band into the 80s, if you will. But there is some really great stuff on here. Too Scared to Run, Running All Night, Prisoner, Sell Your Soul. Just some really great hard rock, 80s style hard rock metal on this record. Great drumming from Lee. And then Lee would play on many more Uriah Heep albums after this. So just really sad. Like I said, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman were two very influential albums on me early on. So Lee's drumming on those records for me was just fantastic, and his involvement with creating those records, two of my favorite metal records of all time. I also love his time in Uriah Heep, Demons and Wizards, Magician's Birthday, Return to Fantasy, the live album, Head First, which came out after Abominog, plus many others that he did with Uriah Heep are just great. So him and Bob would team up again and go on to start a band called Living Loud, where they would put out an album and a DVD where they played some of the songs they wrote with Ozzy, as well as some other new things that they had written, and that's great heavy rock stuff on that album. So Lee Kerslake, a great drummer. He did get some recognition from the Osbourne camp, if you will. A few years ago, when Lee was becoming very sick, he reached out to the Osbournes and asked them for I don't know if they were the gold, platinum albums recognizing his participation in those records, and Ozzy and Sharon did send him these and send him a nice note. But unfortunately, like I said, there's just so many people out there that think that Tommy Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo played on Diary of a Madman. So it's really a shame and a crime that Lee and Bob didn't get the credit that they deserved for their involvement with those records. But for those in the know, we know he was on that. We know what an amazing drummer he was, what a great background vocalist he was. So, Lee Kerslake, thank you for the great albums. Thank you for the great drumming. Rest in peace.